This is good culture.
There are two kinds of peace in this world. The one produced by suppression, which is the passivity of death. The other brought about by a proper adjustment of living, acting forces. A nation or an individual may be at peace because all opponents have been killed or crushed, or nation as well as individual may have found the secret of true harmony in the determination to live and let live. That's Anna Julia Cooper in her book, A Voice from the South. I am Sho Baraka. This is the Good Culture Show. I'm excited to be here with you, and I have some friends along with me.
Hey, I'm Anastacia. Nice to see you all.
Somebody's slow. Somebody's slow.
Is it me? Oh,
It is you.
I'm just saying, I'm on the bottom over here, and so I thought that was Tryce.
Yeah, we
What's
worked
next?
on this. We said it was going to be
Maybe
me.
I should say more
Anastacia.
about myself. Do I need to say more about myself?
Tell us who you are, Anastacia, until somebody's ready.
Just
to
leave it in.
introduce themselves.
Just leave it in. That's
Okay,
fine.
I'm a daughter
happy
of the
to look
king,
stupid.
first and foremost. And I work professionally in the nonprofit space. And I am a believer, and I'm a friend of good culture.
go.
And I'm happy to be here.
So this is your first episode. The other folks, this is their second or third. So this is your first. Is there anything else about you that you want the people to know? Because the way that I've introduced myself is somewhat of you're a polymath, but I'm like the artist. One of the things you guys understand, or hopefully understand by now, is that we're trying to bring a collective conversation with people from different perspectives and fields. And so I'm the artist. We have academics, but I consider you to be an advocate.
Yeah, I think I'm an advocate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm an advocate for righteousness, for truth.
Come on.
I'm an advocate for the vulnerable.
Come on. Is there anybody
I'm an
else?
advocate for wisdom.
Come
I
on.
believe in wisdom.
All right.
And to that end, I'm a PhD student. I'm studying leadership and transformation, and so I bring all of those things to bear
And the wearer of nice shoes. Come on, put them shoes out there.
with lotion on my ankles. Okay.
Oh.
Oh,
All right.
Okay.
Ian, it's your turn.
Okay, so now it's me. I'm Ian. I'm here. I'm back. I'm apparently lost.
That's
It's
all
okay,
right.
brother. We'll
But-
find you.
but,
We'll find you.
We're
I
going
serve
to bring
as,
you along. Don't worry. When we get to the promised land, we're going to grab you. You got to come
There we
with
go.
us. Son. I don't
There
care
you go.
how lost you
No, man.
feel.
Oh my God.
You're
Yeah,
coming
so
with us.
I'm a service executive pastor here in Fayetteville, North Carolina, as well as the director of operations for Good Culture Institute. So
It's giving
Rolling.
promotion. It's what it's giving.
Absolutely. And
Yes.
As he should. Tryce.
And I'm Tryce Prince. I live in Chicago with my wife and little ones. I'm an academic, researcher, social theorist of race. And then I also do work as a research consultant with churches and church leaders.
Word. All right. So before we get into the topics today, we have a few. We're going to be talking about, I guess you can say, the state of Christian music as it pertains to CCM and gospel to some degree. We'll also be talking about.
Wait, I want you to run it back. This is going to be edited, right? What happened to what's good?
I was about to
Okay,
get into
my
that.
bad.
I knew that's where you were going.
My bad.
Come on,
I
Ian.
didn't.
okay.
I was just going to go with the flow.
All right, I need to be more
Can
discerning.
can you let me cook as
I
the
need to
young
be
folks
more
say? Let
discerning.
me-
I need to be more discerning. All right, my bad.
All right.
Okay, run it
No,
back.
we're not cutting that out. We're leaving that in there, by the way. So we're going to be talking about CCM music and gospel music and some of the blow up that's happening around that. We're going to be talking about an interview that has kind of taken the net and social media by storm between Ezra, Klein, and Ta-nehisi Coates. And we're also going to be talking about a study or a research that just came out. I think it was NBC who published it. And it's basically polling, I don't know how many Gen Zers, but around what does it mean to have a successful life to you? And there were like 13 different categories, but there were also some other things that were included. And we're going to actually kind of reveal our own top 3 to 5 to 13 lists of ourselves, even though none of us are Gen Zers. But we're going to say, what
Some
is.
of us are quite far removed. Quite far removed.
All right, see, already.
I actually cannot lie on air. I am the oldest
about
Gen
to
Z.
Are you
He
Gen
just
Z?
made the
1997.
cut. He just made the cut. Yeah.
You too? Ian?
1997. Stand up.
Oh, so I'm old.
Wait, hold up. So I didn't know this either. I did not know this. So how old are you guys, if you don't mind sharing?
I think I'm 28. I think that's right.
You think you're
You think you're
28?
20?
You don't
Yes. Yes.
know? Okay.
Okay.
I know how old I am, and I ain't trying to say it.
Okay.
Oh,
Are
so
you?
am
Nah,
I, and
it's
I'm a woman.
I,
I'm 36.
I just cut 40 this year.
Well, you ain't no
Then you're
Gen.
not Gen Z.
You're millennial.
No, I'm not a Gen Zer. He said, "How old are we?" I said he just made the
happening?
cut.
thought you said you just
I'm
made-
Yeah.
barely
Oh,
a
okay.
millennial.
Okay.
My bad. My bad, Ian.
I'm almost Gen X like Sho.
So I'll represent and receive all of the Gen Z backlash. I'll be the Gen Z spokesperson.
We're not gonna do you like that. Just like I ain't gonna represent all women. We're not gonna do you like that.
Come
So
on now, somebody.
I mean, I was ready to defend
Well,
Gen Z when
excellent.
we get there anyway. So you
I
ain't gonna
thought
be
you
able.
said you was going to defend the whites, Ian.
uh-oh.
No. What? Why would you say that
This
already?
is crazy. This is gonna be a great episode.
That man said,
I don't know, man.
Crazy.
Anastacia being here is bringing a little bit of the crazy, man.
No,
But
no,
let's
I
no.
know
go.
you're welcome.
it's the more we get used to one another, it's gonna get like this.
You're welcome.
But
Uh-huh.
I was under the impression that you was the token white guy as well. So I guess
Yeah, token. That don't mean I gotta defend her and all the crazy stuff we do.
No,
what's good? What's good, my friend?
Just in life, I'm gonna
Yes.
tell you because that's the question I was ready to answer, and then you
Yes.
trying to.
What is good in life?
All right.
What's good in life?
In life, man, what's good is so. Last week, I went back to Michigan, where I was born and raised, for the first time in 8 years, and I watched my Detroit Lions play a home game for the first time in my life,
Oh wow.
and it was amazing, and I had so much fun, and I can't afford to go back ever, but
Excellent.
it was great.
Yeah. Nah,
So I'm still riding. I'm still riding that high.
that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
This is going to be a little counterintuitive, but what is good in my life is grief.
Mhm.
Like allowing myself to sit in it, experience it, holding on to the memory of my father helps
Yeah.
him feel like close. And it's not always painful, but it is good.
Yeah.
And so that's what's
come
good for me
on.
right now. I mean, it is always painful, but it's also good. So yeah, that's
love it.
me.
We for those who don't know, we lost our parents around the same time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like weeks apart.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
thank you for that. Because
Yeah.
that encourages me as well. Tryce, how about yourself?
what's good is I am back around family down home in what we call the country of Oklahoma, where I am from, my wife is from. So we get a whole week down here getting to see family and spending some good quality time back home.
Excellent. Excellent.
Good.
Well, what's good for me is I think this past week I've officially determined that I am going to try to pursue a PhD starting next year in most likely English and literature. And so I've been doing a lot of research and reaching out to some folks, getting some insight. I also found that, you know what, I was going to say that I think somebody's going to pay for it, but I don't want to say that just in case there's some other folks listening that want to give me some money. So if you are out there and you care about potentially, like, so if you love this show, what you're
There
going
you
to want to
go.
do is you're going to want this show to get better. And I think the way that this show gets better is by helping me in my education.
Well,
Because-
and I just want to say, Anastacia and Tryce already almost both have their PhDs, and I need one as well. So if once yours gets covered, I'll take whatever's
No,
left.
you don't have to wait in line. Listen, our father owns cattle on 1,000 hills. All right, you don't have to wait for it. It's yours right now.
Y'all didn't know we got a preacher
hear
on
you.
us. We got a preacher. She's an advocate and she's a preacher. Daughter of a preacher.
Daughter of two preachers.
Daughter of two preachers.
Daughter-in-law
All
of
right,
two
now.
preachers and married to one.
Woo.
Oh, yes.
Well, there you go.
Look at that. Well, speaking of being in the church, that means you have a lot of connection to the music that comes out of the church.
Can't sing it, but I do listen, yes.
So I wanted to do something, but we're not going to do that. I wanted to do something around maybe our favorite gospel albums, but rather than just talking about some of our favorite, maybe we can get to that towards the end of this particular segment. But there's been a lot of noise around CCM music. Tryce, you're going to have to help me out with my man's name. So the founder and I think he's the president, if I'm not mistaken, of Maverick City Music, Norman
Jumpy.
Jumphy.
And he is the third co-founder. The other two initial co-founders are Tony Brown and Jonathan J.
All right.
So Norman
He's
is
obviously
the
the more
third.
vocal, the more present. As he did an interview, as many of you probably know, some time ago, that kind of blew up the internet. But just recently, yesterday actually, Chandler Moore and Naomi Rain stepped down on the same day, which is really, really interesting. Not a,
Within like an hour of each
yeah,
other too.
no, nothing really. It's just all speculation to why they didn't really communicate why they left. So we want to be good journalists in how we respond to this. But there are some articles that have been out recently that talks about just the nature of CCM music, and we're going to talk about that. There's one article that was written by the Salon, and I think it was Amanda. Let me look at her name. Um, Amanda Marcotti. Anyway, she wrote for the Salon about how how the MAGA movement is trying to court or vice versa CCM music, hence some of the music that was displayed at the memorial that I did not watch, but I did see clips. But there's also an article at CT kind of talked about how CCM and gospel music are almost pitted together in this tension. When you guys read that and you saw the information or the news around Maverick City, what have been some of your thoughts just swirling around CCM? What are your perspectives of CCM? Do you enjoy listening to CCM? Do you feel like CCM and gospel are related in any way? Do you feel like black people who engage, especially black people who grew up in black traditional churches who engage CCM music, is in some way violating some sort of, I guess, commitment, not commitment, or yeah, I can't think of the word.
No.
Yeah,
It's a short
no,
answer.
no.
No, I don't think that black people who listen to CCM music are disloyal
Disloyal, that's what I
to
was
like their gospel roots. I can only speak for myself. Like, I'm a person who enjoys like the Mississippi Mass Choir, right? Who enjoys Mary Mary, who enjoys Commission, and who enjoys Miranda Curtis, and also enjoyed, and I'm like using that intentionally, the Carrie Jobs, the Chris Tomlins, the and the like,
So let me
right?
rephrase the question because I think I didn't do it justice. Do you feel like CCM, specifically Maverick City, as some people have claimed in the article, the CT article, that it is a direct ripoff or in some ways an attempt to flatten what gospel music is and what it's done to kind of propel the artistry of black folks, but white, like, but deep in the pockets of kind of like CCM market.
Yeah, I think there's like an economic engine behind it for sure. Like, yeah. So like we can kind of talk about the artistry aside. We'll put that aside. But yeah, do I think there's an economic engine, kind of irrespective of that's just business, that I think seeks to monopolize like the music market? Yeah. And do
Yeah.
I think that that has like impacted Christian music, whether it's CCM or whatever? Like, yeah, like at the end of the day, at the beginning of the day, our music, meaning gospel music, has come from a deep cultural, soulful, spiritual, painful place, and that has been co-opted by like economics in the market. And I think that we have participated in that in some ways.
Absolutely.
All right, and I think in other ways we've become victims of that.
Yeah.
And the point that you mentioned about it kind of being pitted against one another, and the origins and purpose of gospel music was my reaction, and what I would like to focus on maybe just a little bit more is what gospel music is, and starting at that point.
Yeah.
Because if we assume that everybody knows what gospel music is, I think we're making a mistake.
Come on.
Because, you know, when the title of the article says to black worship leaders, gospel versus contemporary worship is a false dichotomy, I think that there is something that's being communicated that is not the whole truth. So my reaction to this story, and then the departures of the latest kind of central figures, is to remember a story that came out in 2020. So this is the year after Maverick City kind of broke with their first big album. And it's called How Maverick City Music is Breaking the Worship Music Mold from Relevant. And this is where my personal hesitancies with Maverick City music, as someone who has listened to their music, whose family likes their music, But the entry came through this article where it was very clear to me, at least, that there was a concerted effort to try and transcend the gospel category.
Mm.
And it did seem to me that the impetus behind that was not one that was really about music, it was about industry.
Yeah.
And so I think with this conversation, it's important to disentangle the conversation about industry, which I think Norman specifically is having and others are having whenever it comes to
Mhm.
CCM,
Right.
and then music and the origins of what gospel music is. And I'm not sure that Maverick City music, in my opinion, checks all the boxes of what Black music is and has historically been in the Black church.
And so I would say let's help tease out what gospel music is. And one of the
Yeah.
things that I think you've hinted on but didn't touch directly is that it is music that comes from Black churches, traditional Black churches, not evangelical churches, not kind of like your. I mean, it could be non-denominational churches, but for mostly it is, as you said, the pain, the resiliency that comes that is a progeny of spirituals that existed, as I think one of the articles mentioned, that existed before there was ever a market. So
Correct.
you talk about this music that is birthed on the plantations, right? And
Mm-hmm.
to try to do away with that kind of genre or to manipulate that is not only just trying to erase a genre, it's erasing history. It's trying to erase pain. It's trying to erase, honestly, identity in a lot of ways that I think when people like Norman get on platforms and speak in the way he did, which I want to be transparent, I did not watch the full interview. Um, but you can discern a lot from people's clips in the same way that you can discern a lot from not watching all of Charlie Kirk's videos. I can get the context of of what you're communicating.
Yeah.
And it is clear that he is driven by market.
Yeah.
It is
Right.
clear that he is trying to change the market. And in some ways, I did see a clip where he said at the end, he was like, y'all, I'm tripping. I love gospel music. I just think that it has its issues, blah, 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 blah. But that took him towards the end of the interview to say that when he was really in his emotions, the truth came out.
Yes.
And so now here's where I will have some grace and you guys can pick it up. I don't know how much Mavericks the musicians play into the mechanism of being agents of trying to destroy a genre. Does that make sense? Like people can be tools and mercenaries.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's right. I think we're and I'm just again, I love what you said, Trice, like separating kind of like industry and economics from musicianship and the story that I think the music is telling. From my perspective, Maverick City for me is an evolution of gospel, right? It's
Yeah,
an
absolutely.
evolution of what
Yeah.
music and the Black experience can be, and how we are expressing ourselves congregationally, and how we are connecting
Absolutely.
to God, and I think that that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
And I think, but folks have the business of it though has tried to co-opt that and simultaneously devalue gospel. And what I'm using that language of devalue specifically, and what I mean by that is try to communicate to us that gospel music has no market value. And if it has no market value, it has no cultural value. And I think that
Right.
is the lie that is being told, and that thankfully that the interwebs like pushed against. And we need
Yeah.
to see more of that.
And stepping back just real quick, I did come kind of prepared with some literature. I was thinking about what's some literature that we can use to ground our discussion and what gospel music is, the history behind it, so that we can kind of make Norman's comments historical and in context. Whenever he talks about in the interview, gospel music is struggle songs, and the choir and choral music is dead. Nobody wants to hear that anymore. Or the assumption that gospel music won't sell. I think there's a particular assumption that folks are making about who the consumer of gospel music is. And I think the assumption that he is making is that gospel music won't cross over to non-Black audiences, to the mainstream.
Yeah.
But whenever he talks about gospel music kind of being rooted in struggle, it really frustrated me because I think it's a limited view of what gospel music is. And so I got out a book by a mentor of mine, actually, called Conjuring Freedom, Dr. Johari Jabir at University of Illinois, Chicago. And one of the comments that he makes is that, and it's similar to what Dwayne Hill talks about, or Dwan Hill in the CT article, about some of the core themes of gospel music, this call and response element that is integral. Eric McAllister talks about the full bodily participation of individuals in worship, particularly in gospel music. Jabir says the call and response form of sacred songs was not only a musical device, but also a practice that leveled differences and taught the sharing of authority and responsibility. And he goes on to say that this sensibility endured over centuries. Through singing, men and women who had been slaves heard themselves as free before they saw themselves as free. The practices of collective singing as a strategy for organized protests pervades the narratives of slave revolts and mass demonstrations in the 20th century. This tradition of using music to conjure an unseen power in this way demonstrates what Paul Gilroy calls the politics of fulfillment, the notion that a future society will be able to be realized, the social and political promise that present society has left unaccomplished. So it's not just about the struggle in the lived temporal world.
Right.
It's about a future society where those struggles do not exist. So it's a recognition of an experience now and a looking to. And Paul Gilroy in his book, The Black Atlantic, talks about how you can't divorce Black sacred music from the people that it derives from, the purpose that it plays, in the context from which it's produced. And I feel like Norman was doing that and not recognizing the full scope of what gospel music is and what it does for Black people.
James Cone in Spiritual and Blues, he talks about these 4 different components. And I should know them off the top of my head because I mentioned them in my own book. He saw that it was good. I think it's over there. So if you know.
Did you want me to?
No, you could definitely not do
later.
that. But he talks about, to your point, Tryce, I put your first and last name together. There's this eschatology that is quite important in gospel music that teaches this concept of how do we hold on? It's the already but not yet, basically. Like, how do we? So you talk about the repetition, you talk about the corporal involvement, but there's also this element of how do we talk about a future that we may not be experiencing now, but yet we hope for it and we know it, that the Lord is going to provide. I talk about this in the sense of that I remix the I Got Shoes, You Got Shoes, All of God's People's Got Shoes with Might Not Go on my album. That is both a song that talks about how the Lord provides basic accommodations for us that slave owners will not. And then there's an indictment to everybody who talk about heaven ain't going, right? And so gospel music has a very deep, rich theological component to it as well that I think is underestimated. But
absolutely.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was researching when we were researching how to pronounce Norman Jomfie's name. So I just Googled him, and one of the first things that came up is a quote accredited to him that says, he's kind of talking about a lot of the same stuff we're talking about here. He said, I didn't grow up on food stamps in the hood, so never would have made it. Don't hit the same way. And to me, that's like what you guys are saying. Like, that's missing so much of the point of what not just gospel music, but any music is supposed to be about. Like any art,
as if it
is supposed
doesn't
to be
extol
about,
the great
right?
mercies of who God is, the Christology of Jesus.
Right.
Like
That's what I'm saying.
all
Like,
it only does is it talks about struggle music. It is ridiculous.
And like that song, Never Would Have Made It. Like, I don't know if you guys can tell, but I didn't grow up listening to gospel music. And so it wasn't in my house. It wasn't in it. There you go. But it's just, I somehow encountered that song at a really low point in my life. It wasn't about financial struggle or anything like that, but it was just that reminder, like, man, none of us are going to make it without God. And the depth and the beauty of a song like that is so much, for me, is so much more powerful than just only ever singing songs about how great God is. And I'm not trying to diminish the
No,
greatness
but not
of
only
God,
that,
right?
but not only that,
Like,
it's not the concept of never would have made it is not just relegated to financial like
right?
status.
Yeah,
Precisely.
Like
that's what I'm
talking,
saying.
it's the whole gambit of what we deal with as Christians in this life.
And I think something that I might fumble through this because it's just kind of occurred to me. I think we're having a conversation, or like Norman is talking about or trying to like separate like what's profitable and what's not. But I also think there's this larger conversation about what is worship and what is not. Like what is pure worship? What is this like genuine connection to the Lord?
Yes.
And I think that there's a narrative that I think that suggests that CCM is worship, right? It is
It's the real stuff.
installing
Yeah.
who God is. It helps us to connect with him. It's pure. And that gospel somehow is tainted because it's too much of the flesh or too much of this or too much of that.
Too much of the earthly
Too
component.
much of the earthly
corporeal,
component. Yeah. And I think I'm like, that's a lie too, that we have to like tease out and
Right.
expose that gospel is not worship.
Well, it's the branding, and I think the one thing CCM has done a marvelous job of is it's, and I don't mean this like I mean this in the same way like bad meaning bad, but bad meaning good.
Cunning.
Like
Cunning masterful.
Very cunning thing.
Yeah.
Is that it knew how to take advantage of the market.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you label something worship music,
Yeah.
then now you've cornered the idea in people's mind.
Yeah.
Because language
Yep.
is important. Labels are important.
Yeah.
And so now anytime I think of worship music, I'm like, oh, well, there's a whole category for that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
And if you're
to be
not in that category, then it's not real worship.
right.
Yes.
And to be fair, to some degree, labels are good because, for instance, poison, we need to know what's poison, what's not poison, but it can also be a detriment.
Oh, I thought you was talking about BBD. Sorry.
He tried to earn his card. He tried to earn his
did.
card
Yeah,
back.
yeah,
He was
yeah,
like, I
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
grow up.
Talk to me.
Ah!
Let me throw out a black group real quick. BBD poison. Oh, there we go.
Come on, man. Just keep going. I'm sorry.
No, but the other thing, I'm gonna pass it real quick. The other thing that I think, and we're gonna move on to kind of like CCM and its connection to MAGA.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is really interesting is that this is not really a new conversation on what is gospel, and to kind of approach it from a different perspective. I've been reading a book about Andre Crouch written by Robert Darden and Stephen Newberry, and it's just a phenomenal piece of work. I mean, if you want to know everything, you want to know what Andre Crouch ate in 1970 at 3:00 in the morning, then this is the book for you. But it's a wonderful not only biography or about him, but it also is a wonderful treatise about the market and how it was impacting musicians. And a lot of
Yeah.
people did not consider Andre Crouch gospel music for a while. Because of the style of music, because he was more innovative in a sense. He says, I listen to Sly and the Family Stone. I listen to Stevie Wonder. And I want my music to kind of fit that. So the question would be, is how does style also, and I recognize these are not areas of expertise for you guys, so this is more of us conjecture. How does musical style impact the way you view certain types of music? Because I do think you said something important, that Maverick City is a progeny of gospel, but I also think it's a progeny Tryce, you can probably speak to this, of the greater kind of beige society that America has created. And that when you grow up listening to, let's say, Kirk Franklin, and you also grow up listening to, I don't know, 21 Pilots, I'm just throwing groups out there.
Yeah.
That's going to impact the way you make music.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so I'll just lay that out there. Thoughts?
I think there's a couple of things we have to acknowledge. I think you're spot on. Like, younger Black people grew up listening to Andre Crouch, John P. Key, and U2.
Yeah.
Like, we did. You know what I mean? Like,
Right,
whether we was like sneaking in or whether it was just like on pop radio or whatever, like we did.
Right.
And so I think there's like a natural progression, a natural evolution towards like like hybrid music, if you will,
Right,
you know,
yeah.
that we're gonna just start experiencing. And let's be clear, the Blacks was rocking with Maverick City music. Like we was all in there, Jara, you know what I mean? Like we
You ain't
was
gonna take Gyra from me. I don't care what
and
y'all
still
say.
won't. Okay, let's be clear. And still won't. Like and even on YouTube, we started seeing all of these folks in somebody's living room with the little mic and the look in their acoustic guitar. Like that became like a cultural thing. I think the challenge becomes when we start to kind of extol one expression, one preference, one style, and then demean the other,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's what we're pushing up against.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
we're not going to stand for that. Like, yeah, we enjoy the Beijing of music is crazy, but but
That's a
not at
little
the
yeah.
expense. But we will not simultaneously disrespect our grandmother's music because that music is
Right.
ours.
Absolutely.
You
Well,
Come
know.
on.
I
Absolutely.
think it comes back to what you were saying a few minutes ago, Anastasia. Like not just musical style, but just the way that people worship is different from one person to another. And I was having a conversation with someone here at the church on our worship team who was getting frustrated that people weren't necessarily participating in the worship the way that they maybe expected them to do. And I had to like, listen, man, you see this guy over here when he's got his head down and he's grabbing hold of the chair, that person's worshiping. When this person is walking back and forth or silently, whatever, they're worshiping. Just because they're not got their hands raised and singing at the top of their lungs doesn't mean that they're not worshiping God in a way that makes them feel connected to their creator. We talked about something that's been really powerful to me the last several years is this idea that lament is worship too, right? Where I can be yelling at God and still worshiping him. And
Because
it
it's
don't
it's
look
a
like anything that's anywhere in
yeah.
the popular market because nobody wants to pay for that. But it doesn't diminish or make less the fact that it is real worship and it is real
Absolutely.
way of
I think we
connecting
can
to
have a
him.
whole discussion around what worship is in
Yeah.
general because I think the
Right.
way the theology around worship is terrible. But I don't know, Trice, did you have something you want to throw in before I change the subject?
Yeah, I just want to speak to the point about style that Anastasia made and specifically the expression of music. I found it interesting that Norman focused so much on what could be sung and
Mm.
speech and words in music, and how oftentimes the perception is CCM can be sung. And what I
Yeah.
hear is CCM can be replicable.
Mm.
One of the important pieces about gospel music is it is not like CCM in many ways. One of the important ways is the instrumentation of it, the instruments, how to play specific gospel chords, timing, tempo.
Mhm.
Singing gospel music is completely different approach than
Yes.
CCM. And so the emphasis on speech, I think, is a strategy because it speaks to me that he's wanting to replicate something. And I've had an experience as an ethnographer, as a sociologist, where I'm speaking to a Black worship leader in a predominantly white space. And leadership comes to him, hey, we want to incorporate more gospel in our songs because our membership is diversifying and we want to represent the full scope of Christian worship. And he had to tell them, we can't do that because our
Mhm.
musicians cannot play it and our singers cannot sing it. It is not just as easy as copying and
Yeah.
pasting. There's a spirit and a talent of
Skill.
musicianship behind it
Yeah.
that's not easily replicable. And I think that that is probably one of the reasons why he focuses so much on speech and not what Albert J. Rabbitoe in Slave Religion calls the danced,
Yes.
expressive religious elements of gospel music.
Yes.
You can't
Yes.
replicate that. And Maverick City Music is tapping into that piece, I think,
Yeah.
this expressive part of gospel music, while also bringing in the replicable elements of CCM because you can sing it a little bit easier. You can play it a little bit easier than traditional gospel music.
Yeah. Not Toni Morrison, Zora Neale Hurston talks about. So I love the definitions. I can't remember who the gentleman is, but we'll put those books in the kind of like liner notes or the show notes. But Zora Neale Hurston in Sanctified Church talks about this element of improvisation.
There
And
it
that's
is.
important in the church. That's important in the context of not only black church she talks about, but in our music. And she laments in a lot of ways the burgeoning movements of like quartets and the Fisk Jubilee singers, although they did a lot for the not only the black church, black music, and actually the ability for black people to make money through their gifts and talents. In a lot of ways, it also subtly shames this important component that makes black music really unique. There's something about this need to allow for the spirit to do its work.
Yeah, decolonize your worship, man. I'm saying that on purpose. Like, we got to decolonize our worship, and I mean, like, with respect to time, like how we experience time, how we value time, how we perceive time, and how we what we allow God to do, and things that we've called like fleshly and emotional. That I think is just like a decolonized way
That's fine.
of connecting
That's fine.
with
I'm
God
gonna fix it in just a second.
and with our neighbors. And again, that's not to say like just to get carried away all the time, but I think there's a deeper issue here of just a devaluing of how Black people connect with God, with one another, through music, through worship, through food, and even our experience of time itself. And I am excited to see more people like pushing back on that. And I hope that more young people will, this moment of disrespect will inspire young people to do their work, understand their history, and start incorporating more of the elements of traditional gospel back into the music as we continue to evolve.
So what I just heard is that it's okay for me to be late and to have CP time because time is a white supremacist construct. So we gonna move on, ladies and gentlemen.
I think that's true.
So wait. Does that mean that when I'm late, I'm an ally?
Say again.
I said, does that mean that when I'm late, it makes me an ally too?
I
Because
think
I'll be late
true
all the time.
because I know
solidarity.
who your wife is.
True
so
solidarity.
Okay.
Nah, we
All
gonna
right,
leave.
that's
We
fair.
gonna leave
That's
that
fair.
one.
You good?
We gonna look. Be on time. Be on time and stuff. And me talking is crazy, saying because
really
anyway.
And
real-
Anastacia, to your point, I'll broaden it and say we also need diasporic competency. It's not lost on me that Norman's parents are first generation immigrants from Ghana. What he might want to do is ask them questions about what their experience was, and if never would have made it, and the struggle songs would have,
Come on.
been relevant for
Resonated with
them.
them. Come
But
on.
it's important, I think, to understand that music is a diasporic modality. It's a diasporic expression, and for Black people, that has roots, as Albert J. Rabbitoe says, in Africa.
Yeah.
In the expressive worship, and it's important for us to have that diasporic competency, so we don't be out here, like you said, Anastacia, just devaluing the music that has such a rich history in our culture.
Anastacia said that she used to listen to Chris Tomlin, and I'm interested in understanding why. Is it because of his connection to MAGA and some of what has been going on in our contemporary climate right now?
I struggle with supporting with streams and with my dollar to folks that I feel espouse ideologies that don't believe that I'm human. And I feel that certain brothers and sisters who have made a lot of money.
Just keep talking. I'm gonna let you. I'm gonna help you out. Keep
Thank you. From Black communities, from us buying their music, attending their conferences, have betrayed us by aligning themselves, this is my perspective, to people and aligning themselves with ideologies that see me as subhuman. And for that reason, I divest.
So I'm a child of CCM, and not modern CCM, 90s CCM. I grew up in Oklahoma in predominantly white spaces, predominantly white churches, Stephen Curtis Chapman could do no wrong in these folks' eyes.
Michael W. Smith.
Come on.
Okay.
The songs, I know them, I can sing them. They're probably still played on Christian radio. I digress on that point.
Did you
Because
listen
that
to
playlist ain't
Carmen?
been
Did you
updated
listen
in
to
years.
Carmen?
And did. Satan bite
on.
the
Did
dust.
I listen to what?
Carmen.
Yes.
Carmen. I don't know Carmen.
Yes.
Satan bite the dust?
Of course.
Let me I'm gonna put you
course
on
I
after
did.
this.
But to be fair, Tryce might be a little too young for Carmen.
Oh,
Carmen
yeah.
I might be a little too young.
What?
for
Ain't no
Carmen.
devils in this house? Oh my God.
I was in kids' church, maybe.
Anastasia's going off. But go ahead, Tryce.
But no, but what I was going to say is that to the article from Salon, to the to the author's point, there is a industry around CCM that is heavily limited and does not tend to transcend kind of white evangelical Christian or non-denominational spaces. That is a fact. And I've seen that in so many instances where you're talking about songs, and you're talking about music, and you're talking about worship, particular styles of worship, and folks are like, I don't know who none of those folks are. But it's so prevalent in white religious spaces that to see someone like Chris Tomlin, the brother who has remixed, covered, had every song, in his version, and had some of the most biggest and prominent hits on Christian contemporary radio, to be at the memorial service of Charlie Kirk, to be tapped by MAGA and Republican leadership and others that maybe even were transcending into more kind of expressive and collective style worship that really got to your urban audience to be there as well, I think says to me that there's a particular person in a particular audience that they had in mind, that they wanted to associate someone like Charlie Kirk with. And to do that, you have to speak their language. So who do they tap? Chris Tomlin and others who are very known in those spaces for, I think, a particular political purpose, and that is to appease their largest voting bloc, evangelical voters.
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting that it said only 23% of America consider themselves white evangelicals.
Yeah.
I
like
thought that
they're a
number was much.
minority.
What'd you say? Yeah.
I see it. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, that was just an observation from that article that I thought was really that I was really shocked by. I guess.
So I recently read a book called God Gave Rock and Roll to You by Leah Payne, and it's about like the 50, 60-year history of CCM in general. And so just like we were talking about with the gospel versus worship and commodifying of music, this is not a new thing either. Right. Like this is something that has been, the artists have been being co-opted and used for political purposes for, again, almost 6 decades. A lot of times, I don't know if it's fair to say completely unknowingly, but like not in this specific situation would I say anybody was unknowing or naive in their participation in the event. But it's and then even to your point, Tryce, about a very specific target or clientele, like that is the foundation upon which CCM is built. Like they have this is who this music is for, and they have it. And if you even excellent music that's outside of the perceived preferences of that kind of target demographic is cast aside and whatever else, and it's always been that way because somebody's getting rich off of it.
But I want to be very so. Part of what I was trying to formulate, I'm gonna try to formulate it a little differently here after hearing you guys share some very thoughtful things. Is it okay though for CCM music to be? At what point is the target audience? At what point is it problematic for CCM to be marketed to a particular audience? Because we've talked about how gospel music is targeted towards a particular audience. At what point is there a violation? Is there a biblical or godly or ethical violation? At what point do we find that to be an issue?
I think it depends what the intention and the goal of the CCM industry is. I think that for the last decade or so, it's absolutely been a part of the goal to be seen as a mainstream genre and to expand its reach. And so whenever you have, and you mentioned, I think the number is a little bit less than 23% now of evangelicals in America, but they make up at least and a little bit over of a quarter of the voting bloc in America. So though evangelicals numbers are shrinking, their political foothold are not. So whenever you think about power and you think about influence, that's absolutely, I think, a calculation that is being made. Now, the question is it the right calculation to make? Yeah. And I do believe that if we, to get back to our previous conversation about worship and what true and pure worship is and means, as you said, Anastacia, it's not to affirm a political worldly entity and to robe a political party in ideology in righteousness. It is to what? Speak in worship to God. And so there has to be a question of whether or not worship music, CCM, is polluted by partisan politics when you enter into the political realm. Because let's be clear, that memorial service was a political event.
We also find that political, I guess you can say, candidates go to particular black churches. They'll gospel artists who will perform at these events. And that's where I find myself being a little just kind of discontented, where though I think music can be political and it should speak, the moment we're co-opted by a party or a particular candidate, that's where I'm starting to be like, all right, yes, speak to an issue, but don't go out campaigning along with Kamala Harris. Don't go out campaigning with Donald Trump, because now what you've done is you've attached yourself. I think, Tryce, you've attached yourself to a political interest that I think violates a lot of the components of the gospel.
So you believe in the absolute separation of church and state? So
this is a much deeper conversation, but to some degree, if I was going to answer, I'd say yes.
Okay.
I'd say yes, because what you get is nationalism if you don't. And I think we all have, I think all of us would say nationalism is bad. But to what degree? Because some of us want a little nationalism. We want nationalism light. So I do think it's a deeper question. But this is also me being and I haven't come up with a term for it yet because I'm trying to coin it, but an extreme pacifist, an extreme component of nonviolence, practicing peace in a way that I think oftentimes people see as weak or, passive.
And I'll let my brother share as well. I think we are probably similar in that we are frustrated with the lack of criticality it seems that you can bring to, I have to agree with you completely. Or if I bring you to my church, or if I attend, this rally, it communicates in this day and age an unwillingness to bring public critique to these systems. And I think that is what the church can't be a part of. I'm not a pacifist, but I'm definitely an independent politically. I take issue with a lot on the left. I take issue with a lot on the right. I am more vocal about what's happening on the right now because my skin is black.
Well, also want to be very clear when I talk about the correlation between Chris Tomlin and I'm not trying to make a false equivalent. I do think the critique is there's an asymmetrical situation here. So I do want to be very mindful of that.
That was clear to me. That was clear to me. I hope it was clear to the listeners. Yeah. But I think that's something that you and I, like I said, have in common. It's I feel that if a pastor brings a political figure, we can also assume that pastor is very unlikely to bring any level of critique to that to that leader. And I think that's what I find frustrating, because that's not the role or the function of the church. The role and the function of the church is to herald the kingdom, and the kingdom is going to disrupt and upset everybody. And I think that there's a lack of that like prophetic voice. And so when we have this void of like that prophetic witness, and simultaneously we see religious leaders that have some measure of influence and power align themselves to either wicked system, it is disheartening, right?
Well, I
2
feel,
points.
yeah.
2 points, real quick. I'll try to make them quick. I think it's also important, like you said, to recognize the nuances, but to also recognize that what we witnessed in Arizona under the name, the memorial service of Charlie Kirk, was not limited to being a funeral and a memorial service. That was a political event.
Yeah.
Right.
I
Absolutely.
think it's really important that it transcended what the church has traditionally and historically done to memorialize and support grieving families by hosting funerals. And so I think you have to have a certain level of nuance to understand that just if it was just a memorial service that Chris Tomlin and others were participating in, I don't know that I would have as much of a problem with it, them offering worship songs and those types of things, because that's a part of memorial services. But this was a political event that I think differs in a lot of respects to what we see in memorial services, particularly in the Black church.
Yeah.
And the second point is that I think the Black church historically has been more consistent on who they let speak from the pulpit than predominantly white churches have been. And so in my church, at least, it's not uncommon to have a white political candidate coming and speaking to the church. And it's not uncommon to have political candidates of different political affiliations coming and speaking in the race time. Now, I have particular opinions on when that is appropriate and when it's not. But the purpose oftentimes is coming from a place of political and civic engagement in the Black church. And the Black church historically has been a central place where political engagement and strategy has taken place.
Absolutely.
To encourage people to vote, to encourage people to participate. Because like you said, Anastacia, we cannot divorce our religion from our lived experience of as Black people. And so being politically involved is a part of being and having a prophetic witness in the world.
Is it possible, Tryce, to do that without all of what you said? Because I agree, you can't divorce it, and the history is there. However, is it possible to do that without attaching yourself to political figures?
Yes, it is possible to do that. I think I think it's possible to do that if you are consistent and you stand on your convictions, as opposed to trying to appease and get close to power.
Yeah.
There are pastors that are standing behind photo ops
Yeah.
often. I wonder if they dilute what they say in the pulpit because it gets them affiliations with power.
Yeah.
I would say look at the work that folks are doing and leaders are doing, but it is possible that your prophetic word can be diluted because you want to be close to power. I'm absolutely in agreement with that, and we have to be mindful of that.
Oh, that's bad.
No, that's good.
How come?
I am descended from people who, in their lifetime, fought with all their might for the destruction of chattel slavery in this country. And they never saw it. They never saw it. In my personal belief system, they died in, defeat, in darkness, And so I guess the privilege that I draw out of this, the honor that I draw out of this, is not that things will necessarily be better in my lifetime, but that I will make the contribution that I am supposed to make.
This is a good culture.
So staying in the realm of politics, another political story that really took my timeline, at least, by storm was the conversation and back and forth between Ezra Klein, the New York Times correspondent, columnist, writer, and Ta-Nehisi Coates, the proclaimed journalist. And Ta-Nehisi Coates has made a lot of splashes in the last year or so, where he seems to be entering into conversations about narratives. He entered in the conversation about the Palestinian and Israeli conflict, and now he's entering the conversation about how Charlie Kirk was memorialized in response to Ezra Klein's article where in the New York Times, where Ezra affirms and says Charlie Kirk was doing politics the right way. And that was, I think, the central argument that Ta-Nehisi had a problem with. And so they sat down and did over an hour-long podcast episode talking about their differences and talking about their perspectives. And what I found to be interesting was on Ezra Klein's side, I think there was an attempt to find an entry point for compromise for the sake of political strategy. And so he tried, in my opinion, to be gracious with Charlie Kirk. But unfortunately, I think he was a little too gracious, because to say he did politics the right way while clips and resources of him making explicitly racist comments and xenophobic comments are all across the web speaks about what we value and what we value most, or what we devalue. And I think that's what Ta-Nehisi Coates had a problem with. And at one point in the interview, he says he found it interesting that he wrote a piece on him, but never quoted his words in the article. And so Ta-Nehisi, I think, was really speaking a prophetic truth. And I heard Ezra Klein trying to talk political strategy about how we quote unquote win. And Ta-Nehisi's quotes, in my opinion, was, we tell the truth and we let the truth guide us, as opposed to trying to find political compromises. And what was interesting is that just didn't seem to be sufficient for Ezra, because he's looking, I think, for political wins, while Ta-Nehisi is, I think, trying to find the moral truths in the situation.
So if I were to approach this from 30,000 feet, I would have said exactly what you just said, because the approach from Ezra Klein is, how do we get power again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the approach from Ta-Nehisi is, how do we speak truth to power?
Yeah.
And those are two different experiences. One person is speaking from a experience of privilege. I hate to use kind of like, the tropes of our day, but speaking from privilege. And another person is speaking from a place of perpetual injustice. Like, and he said, and he even apologized. He said, I hate to keep bringing this back to my kind of like my own personal tradition, but this is nothing new for us.
Right.
And so ultimately they were having two different conversations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I agree, like 150% with what you all have said. I here's what I appreciate. I appreciate the dialogue, because that doesn't always happen,
Absolutely.
right? And I know that they've been friends for a long time, but I still feel so. Like, I'll just step back by starting there. I feel like that conversation was politics the right way, right? Like, not what Charlie Kirk was doing and like trying to debate children, but like two grown men who are at the same level intellectually and experientially.
That's
like
good that you brought that up. I'd never even thought of it like that. Like, this is a grown man on college campuses.
Yeah, debating kids. Like, why is nobody? But anyway,
I never thought about it like that.
He didn't like roll up on grown people. These are 19-year-olds, demolishing them. What? That's number one. So I just want to appreciate both of them for that. Yeah. So of course, like, Klein was speaking from a position of privilege, and I think there's this what Ta-Nehisi didn't say, I don't think explicitly, because Klein was like, well, then what do we do then? Well, what do we do? And I think the answer is, well, we suffer. Like, that's what we do.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
And we might need to suffer. We might need to suffer well while still maintaining our prophetic witness.
Yes. That's exactly
and so
right.
one of my points, I was sitting there thinking, like, man, Ta-Nehisi is so close to being a Christian. He is so close to having
yes, absolutely,
a Christian understanding of what it means to exist in a world where you have no power.
Yes.
It doesn't mean you lay down they kept using the word fatalistic. It doesn't mean you're fatalistic, but it also means that, lo, I do not have power, I still trust and believe that God will deliver me from the lion's mouth or the den of lions. But if he doesn't, he's still good, and I won't lose the fidelity I have to the truth.
That's exactly
now
right.
he didn't say exactly that, but I felt in so many words.
It's like he's almost like he was trying to get
and to
there.
be a little, I guess, critical. I felt like that's a mature, and I hate to, who am I to, But I felt like that wasn't him 10 years ago. Like I felt like he was to me he was much more nihilistic or pessimistic between the world and me. Even in a sense, like some of his 8 years in power, I didn't really get a lot of hope from him. And I'm not saying this is hope,
Yeah.
but it's closer to
It's a
hope.
kind of hope.
Well, that
I'll shut up. Go ahead.
that was what I took away from the thing most of all. Is that Ezra kept trying to call Ta-nehisi fatalistic, but I felt Ta-nehisi was much more hopeful in like Tryce said in a specific way.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like I said, it really encouraged me personally just to hear a perspective of someone who obviously has experienced the world differently than I have throughout his life, but to say, you know, it's essentially say it's going to be okay. Like we're going to get through this. You know,
And this is
whatever
not
you may
the
think
worst.
of this.
Like when he talks about history
part,
and the
yeah.
chronology of history, he's like, "Sir, like we've experienced worst eras."
Welcome to Black America.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. He said
Yeah.
that.
And you know what Ta-nehisi is to me? I think he, as opposed to saying he's a nihilist, he's nihilistic, or he's a fatalist, or he's hopeful, he's what Derek Bell would call a racial realist, in my
Yes.
opinion. Derek Bell is the father of critical race theory. And he's got this paper called Racial Realism. But he talks about racial realism in such a way as being a political philosophy, a philosophy of engaging the world. And he says one of the problems of this kind of liberal response to segregation is that it sets up Black people for failure and despair. Because if the goal is to eradicate racism and discrimination from our society, then you're going to set Black people up for despair and to be unhopeful. Rather, he says the goal should be to be racial realists, to look at the world and say, our wins are in resisting evil, not in defeating it. And I think that's the position that Ta-nehisi is coming from, is that we might not defeat evil in the world, but we can still stand against it. And that is what our role and responsibility is to speak truth to power and to not let ourselves compromise in the face of evil.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think that and like, even when we talk about, I know that you're Sho a practitioner of nonviolence. So even when we talk about like Dr. King in terms of a political strategy, like Kingian nonviolence includes this willingness to have like a personal commitment to like enduring and to like not wavering on your standards, on what you believe is right, on your values, even if that is not going to be like immediately expedient. And I think what Ezra was talking about was I feel like it's like premature compromise. Like there's like negotiation that I think is appropriate, right? But then there's a negotiation that I'm just not gonna do. I'm not compromising my values, right? And I'm gonna stand 10 toes down on that. But that's something that Black people have had to do for a long time in order to not violate our own consciences and not in order to not like violate our God that we serve and that we believe in. And I just think to your point, are having like two very, very different conversations. Another observation that I have is I'm like, well, like these are like kind of like the best of what we have, right? Like these are incredibly brilliant thinkers, leaders.
When you say we, who are you talking about? The Democratic Party, left? Are you saying like us as intellectuals? You talking about journalists?
Think it's us as intellectuals.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah, like us as intellectuals. Yeah. I still think there's such a lack of vision. That is like just a void of vision. I think they're clear on explaining kind of like what the problems are and how we almost like endure it a bit. But I was listening from both of these folks in particular for vision, for strategy. And I think where I depart from probably both of them, like I don't think that Ta-nehisi is fatalistic. I think I'm observing that same like evolution that you're observing, but we need vision. We do need someone to tell us like what to do. And I don't necessarily believe in like the the kind of like the singular heroic figure, like this one,
Right.
person
The
that's gonna
Messiah.
like the Messiah, exactly, Jesus, that's gonna lead the way. But I'm like listening to their conversation and to all sorts of conversations. I'm like, wow, like nobody, like where's the vision?
Can
Where's
I
the
tell you where I
vision?
think the vision is?
Yes.
I think the answer to Ezra Klein's question of what do we do was answered by Brian Stevenson on Katie Couric's show. And I think Brian Stevenson, a Christian, a believer, a lawyer operating in the public space with a profound prophetic witness through the Equal Justice Initiative, is a really good example of what we do in response to what feels like an overwhelming takeover of political and social life from one political party. And in many respects, I think he modeled an answer a little bit better than what we saw Ta-nehisi offer, which is not only do we tell the truth, but we recognize that we cannot move forward we cannot move forward until we overcome our past. And that our past informs who we are and also the vision of what we see ourselves becoming. And so Brian Stevenson, I think, is a really good example of someone who provides that vision and provides the answer that I think strategically and ethically Ta-nehisi is unwilling to answer, because I think he sees his role differently, not as a political strategist, but as a journalist and as a writer and as an author. And I think it brings up an interesting tension and conversation that we might have, is how we see ourselves and what our role is in committing and staying true to that role, even when someone wants to hand you the keys to the kingdom and say, lead us. I think about Howard Thurman. He denied the mantle of the Black Gandhi when Black America was trying to make him the Black Gandhi, because he knew his role as the philosopher of the movement, as Otis Moss Jr. said. And so I think I respect Ta-nehisi for saying, that's not my role. My role as a journalist is to tell the truth.
I think, yeah, that was one thing I deeply admired about the conversation, is that Ta-nehisi kept referring to himself as someone who helps push narratives. And I think Ezra pushed back a little bit to say, look, you are political because ideas incite political thought. And I think we all understand, depending on our platform, the things we espouse can incite certain ideas and ideology, and those ideologies become flesh and blood. But I will say that, to add to an element of what I think makes Brian Stevenson a little different. I did not watch all of that Katie Couric interview, but I'm somewhat familiar with his work. Is some of what I was talking about when you correlate him to the permanence of racism from a Derek Bell. I think part of the issue is that I had with Ta-nehisi and some folks, and even critical race theory in some ways, is this idea that racism in some ways is almost insurmountable, and it's something that we're unable to overcome. Not only that, I do think it's a wonderful kind of like way to apply thought in law, racism in law, and how it's ubiquitous in law. But also, I think the damage is done, and I think I've seen this in a little bit of maybe more so people who like propagate Ta-nehisi, is that sometimes it teaches us to see racism in areas where it may not be, or
Right.
it may teach us to see racism as an ontology just because somebody does a thing. And I think the book Racecraft, and this is kind of like the more libertarian aspect of me coming out, by the Field Sisters, is a wonderful kind of challenge to that. And Ta-nehisi actually, I think he wrote a forward. No, he didn't write the forward. I think he wrote an endorsement. And on the back of the endorsement, he's like, although I say I can't say I agree with everything in this book, I have to admit, like the academic research and the propositions that this book presents is hard to argue against. And so I do think, to roll it back, I think our role on a spiritual level, and then I'll get to the vocational and methodology, a spiritual level is not to see racism as the pinnacle sin. It is a sin, but also it's not the thing that God can't deal with. Like, I think some of us feel like it's a sin that God cannot overcome. And so therefore God does not enable us to overcome. And so therefore we don't even try to engage people who are maybe as they were talking about on the other side of this line. Like
Yeah.
what is the line? And I think the Christian doesn't have the luxury to say, I forfeit my responsibility to be an agent of reconciliation.
Man,
That's a good point.
And then
Go ahead.
After you, go ahead, Ian.
And then
Go ahead.
secondly, and I'm gonna pass to you, Ian, I think our vocational roles are different. And so one of the things I love about what I'm doing here is giving all of us space to enter in our expertise. Because one thing I've noticed, I started the AND campaign in 2015 with Justin Giboney. The more we got involved in actual policy work, the more we got involved with meeting with people who make real decisions, I realized I am unqualified to be here. I was like, I do not need to be here. I need to be on somebody's stage. You know what I'm saying? Or I need to be writing. I need to be writing. I don't need to be, I'm not a policy wonk. And so I began to remove myself because I also realized the danger is when you put yourself in these positions, you speak on things and in ways that you're not qualified to speak on. Yeah. And so that's why I love the fact that I have you guys here, because I know I want to talk about these things, but I have my limitations. And I love that he continued to reference, I'm a writer. And I love that, man, I have an opportunity to tell stories in a way that's going to disarm people, that allows them to hear truths and for you guys to speak to power in ways that I can't.
Yeah. I think what I love about what you're saying, Sho, is, and I'll be quick, is I really feel like on a spiritual level, like that is the function of the church, is to help, like, to equip people to do the work of ministry. And I feel like part of the reason why we're so frustrated is the only like weapon or like tool, I'll use the word tool, that I think that we've been equipped or that we have been focusing on is this. Is like, how can I like out argue you? How can I out comment you? How can I out podcast you? And that is futile against like the demonic forces of racism, right? But like as a storyteller, right? As a person who is interested in interrogating hierarchy just as a structure, right? Like that's what I do. You know, as a theologian, as a shepherd of people with real hearts who are dealing with real things, like how can we then use those tools in the areas where God has given us influence? And I think there's less conversation about that happening than there needs to be. Like, yes, there needs to be like perhaps this global or national strategy, like maybe, but more so, I think there needs to be an equipping of the individual to use the gifts that God has given him or her to do the work where God has sent him or her. And there needs to be more people talking about that.
You preaching. I'm gonna let Ian, because Ian's been waiting for a while.
I mean,
I'm gonna let the white man speak.
Thank you. So and this kind of hits at something you were saying a few minutes ago, Sho. One of the things that really resonated with me with this interview is that Ta-nehisi was saying that there's certain things he's not willing to do at the expense of dehumanizing his neighbor, right? And I think it's real easy for us to identify what dehumanization looks like or objectification looks like in certain aspects. Like we can see it, but I think what we sometimes do is when we boil someone down to a specific opinion or position that they hold, we are objectifying or dehumanizing that individual ourselves, often without even realizing it. When we say, well, I'm no longer willing to engage with you because you disagree with me on this topic, we're saying, we're almost denying the full humanity of that person, not necessarily as overtly or harmfully. I'm not saying that all of this is on the same level. Right, like I'm not saying that casting somebody out or choosing not to engage with someone based on how it affects our mental health or how the opinions we have is the same as being subjected to racism. Obviously, that is not true, but in some ways, it is still an example of dehumanization and objectifying someone based on something that is true about them.
Right.
And so I had to get off social media about 4 or 5 years ago for a good long time because I was beginning to see the people in my church and in my community based on a specific thing that might be true about them, whether that's how they voted or what their opinion might be on a specific issue. And it was becoming hard for me to remember that these people are they are the image of God just as much as I am, and that they were created by when God, they were created by the same God that I was, and that at the end of the day, what is our responsibility to one another is to see the humanity and the image of God in one another. And when we talk about a vision for the future and can racism be overcome, I mean, I'm not trying to get so. There's a word I was trying to use. I can't remember what it is right now. I know a lot of this sounds pie in the sky, but for me, it's like we have to remember who we are, which is that one, we're all image bearers. Two, we're all created by God. And three, we're all screwed up, right?
Yeah.
And it's a quote from a guy named Hanley Mule, referencing Romans 3:23. We've all fallen short. We've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. He says, you may be at the top of a mountain and they may be at the bottom of the well, but you're no closer to touching the stars than they are. And at the end of the day, we all got some stuff wrong, right? We all got some things that, we're not necessarily, none of us are perfect, and we're not taking the right approach in every area. And when we begin to put people in these categories and boxes, we are unintentionally, I think, often objectifying and dehumanizing them and robbing ourselves of an opportunity to learn from someone different than ourselves, even if what we're learning is what I don't want to do. So that's, and I think I have
And
the
that,
benefit of being able to look at that a little bit easier, based on some different social situations. But it is something that's really been sitting on my heart the last couple of years. Go ahead, Tryce. I'm sorry.
yeah. And that element of dehumanization is really important because it was one of the undercurrents of the entire conversation between Coates and Klein.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that Coates, in that quote, he's not willing, to compromise at the expense of dehumanizing my neighbor. I saw Ezra also concerned with dehumanization as well.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever he played the clip from Hillary Clinton
Mm-hmm.
and her characterizations of Republicans and conservative people, I think that's an important element and example of dehumanization as well, like you mentioned. And what I want to do in those instances is sit down and plop the Bible and the gospel in the middle of that conversation, because loving thy neighbor is a simple concept, but it is still radical in a world of categorizations and boundaries. And so the Christian witness, though it might be exhausting at times, is to remind us, in contrast to what Hillary Clinton said, we cannot throw anyone away. And no one is beyond the saving grace of Christ in the gospel. And we see, in scripture, not only did Jesus come to kind of renew and restore the relationship between God and man, he also came to break down that dividing wall of hostility between Jew and Gentile. Boundary defying work is a part of our gospel mandate in our life as Christians. And we need to be examples of that, while also holding to the truths and not letting dehumanization characterize our means and our methods of executing and spreading the gospel in society.
Yes.
The last thing that I want to share about this is I want to say that I think, even though I think Klein's intentions may have been political expediency, I do think him trying to mourn or lament the death of Charlie Kirk is something noble. I think it's
I agree.
His attempt to try to grieve with those who grieve or weep with those who weep. That's something very noble. Now, his intentions may have been just because I'm trying to move the needle politically, But what's really interesting is, and I think we could have spent an hour just on this discussion, is when Ta-nehisi asks him, was silence not an option?
Oh,
that was the question.
I thought of you our last episode. What'd you say? Sometimes you just need the 10th. What did you say? The 10th fruit of the spirit is shutting up.
Just shut your mouth. The 10th fruit of the spirit is shut your mouth. So
yeah, I think we all should do that more. I mean, I know we're on a podcast right now, but
I know we ain't shutting our mouth now, but sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that is right. I don't think, here's what I love about this podcast in particular. I don't know exactly when this is going to come out, but it is weeks removed from some of these events. Like it
Yes.
will be,
Yes.
right? And I think that that's wise.
Yes.
I think it's okay to take a beat, to take a
Yes.
minute, to investigate your own heart, to reflect, to have some conversations before you jump on, you know, the Atlantic or Instagram or whatever. And so, yeah, I think that that's just wisdom to like be discerning as in terms of like what really ought to be said, if anything, in any particular situation.
And the sad thing is that some of our vocations require us to speak. And in that time, you need, I think, wisdom shall rule in your heart on what to say. Because if you feel the need to say something, speak full of truth, but full of grace.
Yeah, and it ain't everybody vocation. It's like some of
Exactly.
y'all vocation. Some of y'all it's just your habit.
And it's okay to also speak what you're wrestling with.
Absolutely.
Speak your questions.
Yeah, there you go.
Speak your concerns, your fears, your joys.
Yeah.
Not everything has to be a perfectly presented conclusion that you have to stand on for the rest of your life.
Amen.
It's one of the aspects of Du Bois that I really appreciate. He was willing to put himself out there even if he was wrong. And I think we have to be willing with discernment to put ourselves out there even when it might not be perfect and it might reveal that we don't have everything figured out, because I think social media tends to make us present ourselves as if we have it all figured out. But it's okay to wrestle in public and wrestle with others. And we need spaces to be able to do that. Social media is not the only one.
Yeah.
We can get face to face with folks. We can put folks in a group chat. We can organize events in spaces for folks to talk and dialogue and process together. We need those spaces. I hope this can be one.
Absolutely.
But I want to also bring those wrestlings as well.
Yeah.
This is a good culture.
All right. So then the last thing we had was an article from NBCnews.com, and it's a poll. The headline is Gen Z's gender divide reaches beyond politics and into its views on marriage, children, and success. And really kind of what's been making the rounds from this the last month or so is the results of the survey. And they gave people 13 options. That's for respondents ages 18 to 29. They said each respondent was able to pick 3 choices. And the females who voted for Kamala Harris in the last election, their top 3 choices were having a job, a career you can find fulfilling, have enough money to do things you want to do, and having emotional stability. Males who voted for Kamala Harris were having a job or career you find fulfilling, having enough money to do things you want to do, and using your talents and resources to help others. Females who voted for Trump, achieving financial independence, having a job or career you find fulfilling, and owning your own home. And then males who voted for Trump, the top 3 were having children, achieving financial independence, and having a job or career you find fulfilling. And then for the females who voted for Harris, being married and having children were 11th and 12th out of 13th. Males for Harris were 9th and 10th out of 13. Females for Trump, having children was 6, being married was 9. And like I said, having children was number 1 for males who voted for Trump. It was being married was number 4. And again, the question was, which of the following is important to your personal definition of success? So I think we just wanted to kind of talk about maybe some real quick reactions to some of those results, and then we were going to share our own lists.
Yeah. And Ian, you mentioned that you had been seeing some conversations that was taking these data and drawing those large conclusions that we just talked
trying
about,
to spin
trying
that
to
anyone
avoid. What were those?
People, the ones that I've seen is just again, it's just kind of throwaway shares from people or stuff on whatever social media platform, but basically trying to say, see, this is more proof that the left doesn't care about family. Or left doesn't value the family, because having children and being married were towards the bottom of the lists and how people on that side would define success. So that's the main one that I've seen of people trying to spin this and use data interpretation as a weapon instead of a tool.
But even women who voted for Trump, I mean, having children was 6, so it doesn't speak highly of, I guess you can say.
Yeah, right. Having children was 6 and being married was 9. So it's again, it's spin, right?
No,
look,
that's
they're
exactly
lower than
right.
us, so
I
they
think it
must
would
hate us.
be
Like,
sorry, I know I keep interrupting you. I think it would be equally as ridiculous to say like to say like, "Oh, this is evidence that people on the right or men on the right are looking for other humans to dominate and control, and that's why they want
right,
families."
right.
Like, right? Like that's that's
That is interesting.
ridiculous.
Yeah, that'd be
You know what I mean? But I could like if we're gonna just like interpret the data however we want,
Right.
then that's the narrative
Right.
I'm going with.
Right.
You know,
You can.
it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, Trice, you're Gen Zer. What are your thoughts?
I'm a Gen Zer. I am also a sociologist, and so I think a lot about data interpretation and specifically charts and how we show and display our data. And I think there's a point that's being made in this particular chart to draw distinctions, between marriage and children, and views on how those relate to our personal definitions of success. But notice that, having emotional stability is high for females and males that voted for Trump, but it's a lot less. It's a lot lower than for females and males that voted for Trump, for Harris and then Trump. And so again, what we choose to focus on is often determined on how we want to utilize the data and what stories we want to tell.
1 second, just for clarity, because I think
Yeah.
people were confused. So you were saying having emotional stability is higher for those who voted for Harris than those
Harris.
who voted for
It's
Trump.
third for females and
Yes.
fourth
All right.
for
Now
males.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Continue.
Right. Versus those that voted for Trump, which was 10 for females and 12 for males. And so again, it's important, I think, to not focus too much just on what's highlighted and miss
Right.
the rest of the context. The other thing that I want to say is, in graduate school, we always talk about what are the alternative explanations for the interpretations that are being made. So to not draw those vast, hard conclusions, one that I wonder is how Gen Z has been watching their parents, their uncles, and their grandparents' generations, and maybe what principles, traditions, or approaches to life had been passed down, but are not necessarily as applicable in our day and age as they were previously. And I do wonder if having kids and getting married is one of those. When we think about the social institution of marriage, it served not just a romantic and emotional purpose, it served a financial purpose.
Practical, yeah.
For couples and for families, for my parents and grandparents, day and age. That was also tied to women's involvement in the workforce and what particular jobs were available. When we think about the pay gap, pay inequality in this country, though it still exists in large forms and industries, it was astronomically different and wider then. And so it made sense. There were also cost of living was something, that people were thinking of. So there's all these different things. Context matters.
Right.
And so I do wonder if Gen Z, instead of maybe saying, oh, they devalue marriage and the family and children, they might just have different priorities, and their lives may not be tailored to supporting what comes whenever you are married and having kids. Now, I don't, as someone who is a Gen Zer and has 4 kids and is married, I had no problem. But I think it's also important to think about some other calculations that are being made. And I just want to kind of plug one book that might give folks in a picture of that. And it's by a sociologist. It's named Holding It Together, How Women Became America's Social Safety Net by Jessica Calarco. I think there are gendered burdens that oftentimes happen in marriage whenever it comes to unpaid childcare and other things that maybe many young women and Gen Z women are making those calculations and saying, I don't want those burdens. And maybe many young Gen Z men are recognizing those burdens. I just think there's alternative explanations that are more interesting to me to think about and have questions about than saying, oh, they devalue, the family and devalue marriage. Well, I hope Trump voters don't devalue having emotional stability. That's important too. And so, that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I think the way that this question is like asked is interesting, like personal success.
Yeah.
I wonder, kind of to your point, like, does having, like, I have children, two beautiful boys, I have an incredible husband. Does that make me a success, or does that mean I just have a functioning uterus? You know what I mean? I,
I absolutely. Is my
I'm
only
like,
value to
yeah.
what I
Right.
produce
Right.
and then
Right.
I
care
love it.
for.
Like, I love it. I love
Yeah.
I love my family. I would, like, literally, like, smack anybody in this room from my family. But, like, is that
Sho, be
what?
careful. She says
I was
she's
like,
not a
word, like what?
pacifist.
What? Why the
I
violence?
know,
We
no
just
violence. I know.
we were just talking about violence.
I didn't say I was a pacifist. You did. That's you. But seriously, it's like, I value this, but it's like, is that what makes me personally successful? No, like, I think financial, from my
Yeah.
perspective, like, financial independence does, like, financial freedom does, like that,
Yep.
and like having that spiritual grounding does. Yes, being in my right mind, emotionally and psychologically, like, those things are incredibly valuable to me. And I get to be a wife, and I get to
Right.
be a mom,
Well,
but I'm not gonna look at somebody else that doesn't have those things and say that
say they're
person
not
isn't
successful.
successful.
Yeah, exactly. And I was even saying, like, when I was looking at this, it's like my answers are going to be different to the question of which three of these things best fits your personal definition of success versus which three of these things best fit your definition of a good or fulfilled life.
Yeah.
Right. Like, because to me, those things they're similar, but different in my opinion.
Yeah. We're
Yeah.
getting into this is the meat in the mud of survey and
Yeah.
survey instrumentation and collecting data. The questions you ask mean everything. I don't love the question either. I think it can be useful to think about how people perceive success, but it shouldn't be used to draw these large conclusions, because the question is limited, and the question is not asking people, like you said, Ian, what gives me a fulfilling life? It's, what do I define as success? And many people have different success is relative. Success for one person might be success in my career. Success for another might be success for my family. It's different. And we need to take that in consideration whenever we read and interpret data.
I think, and I'll end with this comment. I think, so how we design a survey, how do we construct the questions is important. How we interpret the data is important. But I think also utilization of the data. Like, what's the point of this? Like, what is the point? Is it to, like, further divide people? Is it to further, like, demonize?
It almost feels like the things that they highlighted and we'll show this image to the things they highlighted were the real impetus for why they wanted to do this survey.
That's what I'm getting
and
at.
every other thing was more of a placebo. Like, we really just want to know how you guys feel about marriage and kids and where we are as a society, in order to kind of use this as a political tool.
And I don't know who who designed.
I mean, I don't know.
and, like,
NBC is not
distributed this.
necessarily. Yeah, yeah. So anyway,
I don't know, but I'm just like curious about, like, the utility of some of this data, because it is narrative shaping, it is narrative forming, and now is it that if what happens then when we see a Kamala Harris, right? Who is like a childless cat lady, as was said, right? What, like, attributes and what characteristics, what value do we ascribe to her, and how does that begin to erode our ability to connect and respect one another? And I think that's what we need to be wary of.
Yeah. Well,
And for those that are maybe listening and they're like, well, how do we use these data? I think it's a great talking point and entry point to have intergenerational conversations about our principles and values. And especially whenever we think about the role of Christian spaces, not just the church, but Christian spaces broadly, to understand what different generations are valuing, and not, as you said, Anastacia, belittle them because of it, or say, oh, your values are wrong, but help them navigate a world where they may not see their values translated or rewarded, and so they're adjusting them accordingly. Well, how do we come alongside folks, particularly Gen Z, that may not be able to buy a house to fill a family? So what do I do then? Or I've got to live with roommates and I'm getting married and I don't know, where we're going to live. And we may have to uproot ourselves to live in a particular neighborhood that we can afford. And there's all of these different considerations. So I think it's a great talking point to talk to younger generations and Gen Z specifically who are we going through it, y'all. Can y'all think of the things Gen Z has had to deal with over the last decade?
Now, I empathize. I empathize in a way because,
Yeah.
and I also have to understand, because my daughter's Gen Z, she's behind the cameras. I also have to understand, like, the way in which I've been formed is totally different from the way in which she's been formed.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't know a world where, like, information wasn't instantly available.
Yep.
And so, not to shame her, but I think about tenacity or drive. And I think about the go-get-itness of our generation being different from the go-get-itness of this generation. And I think that's directly tied to accessibility and how things are kind of accessible in ways that we didn't have growing up. Like, if I wanted something, I had to go figure out how to go get it. Like, I had to go seek it out. If I wanted music, I had to go to the store and get it. If I wanted, like, friendship, I had to go outside to go get it. And I think that's changed our evolutionary biologists with how it's shaping and cultivating the brains and the way in which we interact. And I have to understand that in the way that I chastise her and the way that I critique her, because it's difficult for me. It's easy because I really want to say, man, what's wrong? But then I have to think, like, you know what? Like, if I grew up in this context, maybe I wouldn't be the way that I am. Like, so anyway, all that to say is, like, I do think that intergenerational interaction, but even intergenerational competency and compassion, I think is also.
Yeah.
And the younger generation has to understand our hangups as well. And my parents' hang up and why they don't understand particular things and get. So anyway, all that being said, go ahead.
So what you're saying, Sho, is that you're going to let your daughter stay at home until she's got everything together. She's going to be at the crib.
What do you think? What's the answer to that? I'm talking to my daughter. What's the answer to that?
Yeah. That's what my wife says too. My wife says the same thing.
She said, "Mom said I can stay, so it don't really matter what you think."
Mom wants her to stay with us for the rest of her life. I'm like, I have look, and so here's the deal. Just to answer that question, and both jokingly, like I struggle with the view in which I would see, like, my daughter versus a male. Like, my daughter can live with me as long as she wants to live with me, because I just personally, I just feel like there's a different type of protection, and maybe this is, and I've also realized I'm a lot more traditional than I thought I was, even by seeing this list. So, but for a dude, like my boys, if they weren't on the spectrum, by the time they were in their mid-20s, late 20s, if they were still like, hey, I'm trying to live with you, I'm like, all right, look here, little Negro, you got to get up out this house.
I think another thing to consider too is, like, Gen Z is very young. And I'd be curious to see, like, a data set that I'd be curious to see is, like, if you were to poll me at 28, what would my values be? Mm-hmm. If you poll me at 38, like, what are my values?
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, that changes, that shifts. And so I think something that's really detrimental about the way that this data is being shared is that it gives, like, this snapshot as if it's going to characterize this generation forever. Like, where they are right now is where they're going to be in 10 years and 20 years. Like, of course not. Like, what I valued 10 years ago, what I valued 5 years ago is,
that's true.
In some ways, my core values are the same, but these, from my perspective, aren't core values. And how I define core values is, like, wisdom, empathy, like, things like that. You know what I mean? And so I would like to see, like, a values list that look like, let's look at that.
So I was wondering, because even some of this, I feel like some of these things are very, there's spiritual components, they're very practical components, and then there's, like, these, like, very, like, tangent, like,
yeah, like this, like, kind of like surface
material
level,
things. Yeah. And I'm like, how do I it's hard to like categorize because I almost see some of these in different buckets.
I agree with that.
But so I'll just go ahead and share my list and I'm glad no one polled me when I was like 20, 21, 22.
Oh yeah, we know you was a fool. As was I.
No, look at you. Let me throw myself in there too. But I did get married when I was 24, so I got it together. And maybe my wife would say differently. But let me go ahead and.
And she helped you. Let's be clear.
Come on, somebody. Sometimes you got to get married to get yourself together.
My God.
See some of y'all single folk out here thinking, nah. I think Jason Wilson talked about. He said we got it together together.
Yeah, that's correct.
And I like that.
Yeah.
Correct.
So for me, number one, and I'll just do the top 5. I'll do my top 5. Number one for me was being spiritually grounded because I felt like I had to do the Jesus juke. Number 2 was using my talents for others to help others. That's what success means to me. Then number 3 was married. Number 4 was children. Number 5 was emotional stability.
Yeah, I had the same 2. The same 1 and 2.
You know, it's crazy. And as I was doing this list, I realized I was like, oh, this is the artist in me because I don't care about debt. I don't care about financial. I don't care about.
I had no material things in my top 3. It was spiritually grounded, using talents, and then making your family or community proud was the third one. So no material things for me. I tend to approach life through the motivations that are not rooted in the material, but are more philosophical and theological and spiritual.
There you go. Look at you. And we're not judging anybody.
And then my wife says, well, how are we going to get paid?
Yeah.
And I
I'm
say,
about that coin. I'm like, I'm about all of it. I'm about that coin.
She said,
Let's be
question.
clear.
I love those passions. I love those passions you have. Praise God for them.
But how we go make
the
money,
grocery,
though?
the grocery bill is this
We gonna make
amount.
money because I'm emotionally grounded and I'm using my talents.
Nah,
and when
she
I use
said,
my
"Look
talents,
here, buddy. You got me pregnant 4 times in 4 years. Like we got to
Feed
get some
these
money."
mouths. Yeah, yeah. I'm working on it. God and crowd bring me opportunities.
I would also say, like, put me in. I used to live in a Middle Eastern country, right? Put me in the United Arab Emirates, and this changes because the way they take care of their people is different. And so like this like need for like financial stability so that I can be free is going down the list because I don't have to worry about that there. I didn't have to worry about that.
That is so important. I think that's important in the context of empire because when so much of our, and I even say Christianity, when so much of our being, our society, and our faith is built on the existence of the stability of capitalism and an economic system, then we tend to care about those things, or we tend to make our faith connected in ways that I don't think the Bible asks us to.
Yeah.
And so, I will say if our society cared about the marginalized and gave greater opportunity for us to, I guess, own property, retire, then, maybe some of these things wouldn't be as important and imperative. Anybody else got any? Ian, you didn't go. What was yours, Ian?
So I didn't feel the need to Jesus juke anybody. No, but honestly, for me, again, maybe I'm the one that's looking at this question weird.
Fame and influence?
What's that?
Fame and influence?
No, it's not on there. But
everyone had that last too in the
yeah, they did.
Everybody lying.
It was.
Stop
it is
lying.
Everybody lying.
They are. Having a job and career you find fulfilling. That's up there for me. I think somehow I missed this when I was looking at the list before, but using your talents and resources to help others is pretty important. And then a lot of the financial ones are kind of the same. Like to me, they all kind of fall in the same bucket. But having enough money to do the things you want to do, having no debt, and then being able to retire early. Like to me, that stuff is important. Again, in the way that I define success, not in what I define as a good life or what is most valuable to me. Mm-hmm. Because obviously, spiritually grounded of my family, all that kind of stuff. Those are probably my core values. Yeah. But for me, my core values are going to be my core values, whether I'm quote unquote successful or not. That's just going to be who I am. Yeah. Whereas successful is more like, am I doing the things that I want to do? Am I fulfilled in what I'm doing? Am I able to make a difference in what I'm doing? And is what I'm doing paying the bills? That's kind of how I would define success. So that's my top 3.
So we are. This has been a wonderful conversation. It's been a wonderful time. I know having y'all jokers on, we probably need to start budgeting for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Because this was a wonderful conversation.
Or giving time limits.
Either that, we're gonna have to give you a time limit.
I will
But I'm
submit
happy
to that. I'll submit to that.
But we gonna have you close out with a little good rant, because usually we give the people a little something to depart with, and rather than all three of us, or I'm sorry, all four of us, rather than all four of us giving a good rant, our sister Anastacia Johnson.
Oh Lord, I really don't have one.
I thought you
Aside from
said-
this,
See how fast she pivoted?
oh my God. No, I really don't have one. Really what I said before about I need us to get some vision. Vision for
Come
the
on.
church, vision, I think, for this nation, vision for our communities. It is really, really important that we get much better at prophesying what ought to be, as opposed to just like dissecting and over dissecting what is and what ought not to be.
We're
And
master
so-
critics, but not master
critics.
builders.
Come on, summarize for the people. So like, I really want that, and I feel like in order to do that, to give some folks some homework, is to be still for a little bit and start to ask better questions of yourself and questions of the world around you. A very simple framework is like the 5 why framework. If you see like, oh, there's division between the left and the right. Why? Well, because the political figures are doing this. Well, why? Like, ask the question why at least 5 times. And then if you feel need, solve for that. Solve for the 5th why. And I think maybe we'll get some vision out of what's happening in the world.
Come on, that was actually
Somebody
good.
should write an article about that show.
Yeah, you probably should.
Actually is disrespectful. Like when people say that was actually
That was
funny.
actually, you know why? Because when we first started, I said, "Hey, everybody, gonna get a rant, whatever," and you said you were gonna talk about lust and sexuality.
I know I was. But
And so I wasn't expecting you. So when you diverted, I was like, "Oh well."
She was embodying the gospel tradition of improvisation as opposed to what was planned.
This is good culture.
Thank you for listening to The Good Culture Show. We hope our conversation sparked something in you. And since you've made it this far, you might as well share, subscribe, and leave a review. Stay connected as we curate, create, and commentate. You can watch episodes on YouTube at Sho Baraka Show. You can also learn more about good culture at goodcultureinstitute.com. Until next time, be joyful and do good.